of us is going to say the date, and I guess it's me.
It's always you.
It's October 9th, 2018, and we're here with your week's news.
And we turned the air conditioner off, so maybe it's quieter.
Maybe it's quieter, but it's not toasty, but it's like that air of mugginess is seeping in through the brick.
It's accelerating. If we look more uncomfortable than usual, that's why.
It's because we haven't OD'd on red pills, which, by the way, is about the Matrix and not anything else. Let's just be clear about that.
Krista thinks it's about right-wing ideology.
I think some other people probably thought that as well.
But that's where that comes from. You get it?
I know.
You didn't know before. All right, well, other things.
Why do those people have to ruin everything? Jesus.
Because they're proving how ridiculous the current, like when you turn hand signals and frogs and stuff into white supremacy symbols, you're just proving how easy it is. The latest one, I didn't catch on, but I really hoped it would, was let's make skeletons a white supremacy symbol for Halloween.
The skeleton one.
How great would that be?
Worse.
Because people would have them on their porches and stuff. But that has nothing to do with the big story this week, which is it was a huge story, and then it wasn't, and then nobody knew, and still, who can say? No one is sure.
The Bloomberg broke the story, the big hat, how a tiny chip that China used to infiltrate U.S. companies. So the thing is that this chip gets inserted in servers surreptitiously, and they can be controlled. They become zombies.
The article I saw compared it to like the size of a pencil tip. Like
it looks like a signal conditioning chip. It's very tiny, but supposedly it has enough memory and power to call home and modify things. This was the Supermicro was supposedly their target. Now Supermicro, even according to Bloomberg, didn't know that they had been targeted, or at least you would assume they didn't. But they had their stuff assembled in China. Supposedly it came back with this extra little chip. Nobody bothered to look for it. But here's the weird thing, the very weird thing. Oh, and Bloomberg also talked about they have a portal on their Supermicro portal that was distributing malware that was supposed to work in conjunction with this little guy. But here's where it gets weird.
It just keeps getting weirder. So let's just go through all the articles at once.
I know we have to pause and talk about why it's weird at this stage of it. First of all, Apple, they were the first to speak out because supposedly
Apple's also targeted.
They bought some Supermicro stuff.
Oh, okay.
So we knew from records that Apple had Supermicro in house. I was like, oh my God, are they compromised? Well, they said no.
They don't know what's going on.
What's going on, Apple? What's going on?
BuzzFeed News.
Why is this?
So yeah, they say, I don't know if something like this even exists. It's like, bro, I couldn't tell you. So it makes sense, I suppose. Even if Apple was guilty, they wouldn't want to admit it. I mean, think about, Intel and their shenanigans.
It would probably be a national security incident.
It definitely would. But they said, you know what? We did buy some Supermicro servers. They were not used on any of our iCloud or anything like that. We used them internally here in the office. We found this in 2015. Oddly enough, they didn't tell anybody. And we got rid of them. Yeah. So that was Apple's story. It was also said that Amazon got some of these machines. They said no, certainly not. They weren't using Supermicro. They knew nothing about this. And then the government's chipped in.
The GCHQ and U.S. officials have cast doubt on this. And it's like, oh, no, we don't have this.
So the government's saying, I think we would know if this was the case. And it's not true. So
isn't this such a bizarre story? It's so bizarre.
Well, what was the Bloomberg article said they had 7 sources?
Yeah.
7 in the government. But that last story talked about how the people from the NSA and the alphabet agencies came forward and they were like, no, I don't know who's telling you this. I would like to know because we want to have a conversation with them.
Definitely not break their kneecaps. Only talk. We just want to chat.
And I think Supermicro, I don't know, they weren't very committal about it, but they also basically said, this is not.
A lot of aspects of this seem like a hit piece against Supermicro, which is a relatively American company.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody thought they were colluding.
Yeah.
They were also victims. So it's a lot of fear mongering.
Now is a better time than ever to invest in Supermicro.
Well, maybe. I've heard a lot of people have this investing strategy of the anti-outrage investment. So they wait for something like, like the Tesla thing to happen, like when Musk smoked the joint, and then they invest right after that dip and catch it when it comes, like reality sets back in. Or, like any of these big companies that have some sort of scandal with the SJW stuff, as soon as that dip hits, they buy it and then ride it back up.
We've got the market data. We should run the algorithm on that and see what sort of theoretical profit.
Oh, there's apparently a lot of returns on that. But getting back to the Bloomberg story, TechCrunch weighed in on it, and they said that they've covered stuff like this before, and it turns out you can't get the truth.
It turns out the government is actually very large and complicated, and so when one person in the government tells you one thing, that doesn't necessarily mean anything on behalf of all of the government.
Which should surprise no one, but...
Now, in this situation, you always ask who benefits, right? I'm not sure who benefits. Maybe just someone who wants us to fear China?
Chaos is a ladder. Someone's trying to climb the ladder right now, but we don't know what's going on.
So, I mean, theoretically, let's speak in hypotheticals, and theoretically, something like this could exist. It is possible to do something that's like 6 pins that sits on like the system management bus or as part of the baseband management controller, and has the capabilities ascribed here.
Especially if you're getting those compromised drivers, like they were talking about from the portal.
And I think that, we've done work in the payment card industry, and definitely like credit card processing equipment and stuff like that comes from China. You would be surprised at the level of sophistication that exists in the hacks in those machines. I mean, there's one group that I read about online that uses an angular momentum, a lab device that measures the angular momentum of their credit card processors, and they have a known good one that has not been backdoored. And so they measure how the credit card processor moves at different angles to measure its inertia to know if the inside of it has been compromised. Because they can't just take it apart because it has anti-tamper mechanisms because it's so important because credit card processing. But at the factory, you get the idea that it's a problem that somebody could be, slipped a couple of $100s and they'll add something to your credit card processing equipment. So in terms of like supply chain attacks and this kind of thing, it's good to have these conversations. Like we should be talking about this. This is stuff that we need to be worried about. But in terms of like a state agency, backdooring these kind of things, you don't even need a separate IC. Like if your UEFI lives on an EEPROM and the goal is to deliver a backdoored EEPROM, you could just replace the entire EEPROM chip with a compromised EEPROM chip that has 2 different sets of memory, a good one and one where it lies to you. And that would be undetectable. Like that, there would not actually be any extra hardware in that scenario.
Your butt looks fine in those jeans. That's how it lies to you.
On the other hand, though, the Apple story, they did admit the 2015 thing.
Yeah.
So why did Apple get rid of Supermicro servers in 2015, if not this? And they did also confirm they found a bug on the driver portal, but it wasn't this, they said. It was something else.
Interesting.
So I don't know. Maybe even Bloomberg was an unknowing, player here. And these 7 sources in the government got together and they were like, hey,
let's have some fun.
Let's take this minimal truth that we know about this and smear China.
Another thing that came up is Google. Google a couple of years ago had a similar report from their data centers that they were looking into incorporating their own proprietary security chip to verify firmwares. And it was the same way that these baseband management controllers are out of band. Google's thing was out of band because they were worried about supply chain compromises.
I don't know if that would catch this. I mean, it would catch the bad drivers and stuff and the bad firmware, but supposedly the chip itself, the way that they found it was actually like taking the specs of the boards and going over them. And it's like, oh, it says there's 20 signal conditioning chips here, but there's 21.
One of them is evil. Which one is the evil one?
That's weird. So yeah, it's a story that got a lot of attention, and it was a big headline. Got a lot of clicks, I'm sure, but might not be true.
There's more to the story always.
And so Bloomberg, they were getting all that attention, and the motherboard was like, "Hey, wait! Look what we can do as well."
So Apple's new proprietary software will kill independent repair on the new MacBook Pros, except it doesn't yet. It's just a theoretical capability. Because remember the new T2 chip, the new security chip, and Apple's proprietary SSD nonsense? Well, it turns out that the same way that there were those screen repairs where you repaired your screen and then you updated iOS and then your screen stopped working because it was not an authorized repair. It turns out that kind of functionality is being built into the laptops as well.
Except iFixit tested it and they couldn't get it to break. They replaced everything. This was supposedly from a leak of internal training documents. So it may just be that it's not been turned on yet.
Yeah.
And
like the iPhone thing.
It could also be that because of this backlash, it'll never get turned on. And they were going to do it, but now they're like, well, you know what? Let's not do that.
Let's just wait a couple patches when everyone's forgotten about it, and then
Yeah. Or make them seem crazy, It's
yeah,
like,
that never happened.
We would never do that.
It's called gaslighting. Happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure does.
So they might just be, playing 4D chess. But you know who's not playing 4D chess? And might be playing a game of checkers is Mr. Elon Musk.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Securities and Exchange Commission.
No. Well, no, I think it's
No,
Musk.
I think they're it's his move at this point. Well, it was his move, and he flipped the board over and walked away.
A U.S. judge has asked Musk and the SEC to justify the fraud settlement as fair and reasonable. So this is the $20 million he will step down thing.
But gets to be CEO.
Still
Yeah, he
continues
just steps
to-
down as chairman.
So this judge is saying this is a little light. Why? Prove to me that this is in everybody's interest, that we're basically slapping him on the wrist.
The judge thinks it's light. It is pretty light compared to what he did.
I mean, the $20 million tweet, I mean, if we had like $3 million, we could probably take over the world. So like $20 million fine for the SEC for a tweet, that just seems excessive.
So they have until Thursday to prove both the the SEC and the board that this is a good settlement, that this makes sense for everybody. And part of that settlement, you will remember, of course, was the team. We talked about this, Wendell. Like, how would you operate if we got to review all of your tweets?
You guys would be too slow.
And tie them up. That's what I'm saying.
Well, like Musk has to have someone monitoring his tweets at all times.
Yes. And the reason for that is this.
But let's say
Well, that came before this happened.
Yeah, this is in order of time. But let's say that there's a ruling coming down that there's going to be a team that has to approve your tweets because you are so destructive with your tweeting. What would you do then? Maybe take a little break.
Yeah, probably try not
Have
to
some
tweet for a while.
self-reflection.
Yeah. So Elon Musk has mocked the SEC as the Shortseller Enrichment Commission days after settling those fraud. Well, it's not really settled because the judge might not okay it, but it's settled
I mean,
with
it
the
literally
SEC.
was
Well,
right
this
after, though.
is in response to the judge's decision that they might not settle it.
Now,
So
I think Elon Musk is within his First Amendment rights to call it the Shortseller Enrichment Commission.
oh,
That
absolutely.
has
This
nothing to do with the stock price.
No.
This
but
is not a crime. You know what else?
It is an idiot move, but it's not a crime.
Another thing that you're allowed to do constitutionally is to drape yourself with partially expired meats and wander through bear country in Yellowstone. You're allowed to do that. All right.
I can
A
see
fed bear
this.
is a dead bear, though.
I can see that the two are related in this case.
yeah.
I saw the tweet and I was reading the comments on the tweet as they were happening, and there were some people who were like, Elon, please stop. Like, I've invested my life savings in your company and I've lost so much money.
And they're
was
not
so
even.
sad.
I don't think they're trolling because they're like, I want to believe,
Yeah.
but I'm losing.
X-Files, I want to believe.
Like if they did I read about if you had timed it even remotely right and caught the wave of the short selling, that he's lost about he's overall given the short sellers about $500 million with his tweets.
And yet no self-reflection there to think, maybe I should stop doing this.
Well, I mean, that's probably what precipitated the whole funding secured tweet, because he's like, no, they're winning, no.
Oh yeah. It came out in the investigation that he actually did come up with that number as a drug reference because he thought it would amuse his girlfriend.
I mean, again,
I remember that, but I thought that was the article author saying that like they were speculating that that's what that was.
No, that was it. Well, I mean, maybe the SEC was speculating, but that was in the paper.
Oh, Elon, you are just like, we should just call this the Level 1 Elon segment, because it's going to be every week.
Yeah,
every
and
week. It's like, what's Elon up to this
it's
week?
Elon or Facebook.
He needs a YouTube channel.
And there are
That'd be the next
those,
thing.
we're going to get a lot of noise from the apologists this week, as we often do. They are a vociferous bunch. They will defend him no matter what he
vocabulary.
does. And this story, unfortunately, is going to sort of galvanize their position.
Well, this is crappy.
Yeah. It's like starting to think some of those apologists might be right in at least some cases.
In some capacity.
It doesn't just because one side is wrong doesn't mean the other side is right.
A broken clock is right twice a day. Is that?
Yeah.
So the headline here is a shadowy op-ed campaign is now smearing SpaceX in space cities. And it is apparently authored by an ex-Apollo astronaut that's saying, oh my gosh, the way that they're doing the fueling here, this cost us a bunch of lives. We killed people when I was at NASA, is basically what the article says. But they tracked down the guy that wrote it, and he's like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about.
Except he didn't actually write it, right?
Yeah.
That was
Turns out it was a PR agency, and this speculates that it was probably Boeing that's running this. So yeah, that's a lot of fun.
And Boeing has no stakes. So,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah. Space travel, or I mean, they're looking out
What do
for
they care?
the best interests, really.
We need to point out that space cities here refers to cities which you launch rockets from, not cities in space.
In case you had just a moment of confusion.
Good job, Ars Technica article author.
It might have been the editor who declared the title. Either way, not a good job.
Well, we've looked at 4 different stories that have made possibly erroneous charges this week. And our 5th story also includes erroneous charges.
The iPhone XS and XS Max devices are experiencing charging issues. I think Apple has already fixed this in the beta.
There's a beta update that you can get voluntarily. But if you don't, and your phone is not awake when you plug in the charger, it may not charge.
Frankly, you're just charging it wrong.
Yeah, you are doing it incorrectly.
Get good. It just works.
But a little
when
embarrassing.
it doesn't.
How do you not catch that? I mean, I guess every time, if you're a developer, when would you ever plug it in when it's not turned on or awake, right?
Especially if you've got the dread pirate Tim Roberts breathing down your neck, being like, or Tim Cook. I don't know.
How would you not notice it though? Because at some point it would have to turn off and
No, they're just like, no, we gotta get.
No,
out
I
the
don't
door.
think. I think it's not that it stops charging when it goes to sleep. It's just you must initiate the charging while it's awake. So if you're a developer, you would never plug it in while it's asleep. That makes
you
sense.
might though. Like if you go to lunch or something, you left it on. It's like, oh, I need to charge it for a little bit.
Wendell, every time you pick up your phone,
It's already on.
you check Twitter
Yep.
or you text message or something. You never plug it in
Yep.
when it's not awake. I guarantee it.
Yep.
You're a normie, Krista.
I am a normie, I guess. I'm like, oh, I need to charge this, and then I'll forget about it. I'm like, oh wait, I forgot to charge it. And then
Well, here's another story that may excite the normies.
Microsoft announces app mirroring to let you use any Android app on Windows 10. I've tried it. It's not that great.
It's also a little that headline's misleading. It's not. It's only a couple of apps.
Yeah, is
It's,
it literally 2?
Mail and text, right?
Yeah, they're planning to open it up a little bit more. Photos, I think it'll bring in photos and text messages. I mean, welcome to 2012. Finally, when Microsoft could do it before with like Cortana, but it was bullshit. And even now, you still have to have a Microsoft account for it to like do its thing, even though it's kind of doing it over Wi-Fi instead of hitting the cloud. At least I hope it's not hitting the cloud because that would be really dumb. But it really should not work the way that it did with Cortana, and this is a step in the right direction to have it work in a not dumb way.
What about a magical future where you can continue your Pixel Dungeon game on the desktop?
We should have been there already. There's no reason that we shouldn't have been there except idiocy.
Well, I think the reason was the Microsoft phone.
Yeah, well, and trying to get you to use cloud services when the cloud doesn't. I mean,
There's a blast from the past, a Microsoft phone.
We need to come up with a word for when like the marketing idiots are like trying to shoehorn cloud in places where it doesn't belong. It's like I've got a light switch that I can turn the light on and off, and it's just mounted to the wall. It's like we need to insert the cloud into this equation.
Cloud-Pository.
Like a suppository for
Right,
the cloud.
yeah.
I like that. That is the appropriate response. Which is why that's the perfect word.
Well, big
Shut the
news.
fart back up. Sorry.
Wait, what? What did you call that?
That's an image you just don't want to see.
If you hold a fart too long.
Yeah, like you shove it back. It's like
Oh,
a cloud
right.
suppository. Yeah.
But then oftentimes it's just as loud going back in, and you're like, why did I even bother? It's ridiculous. Well, let's talk about Amazon. Another big story that broke just as we finished the news last week. Amazon and the $15 minimum wage.
Now, this is...
It's kind of good news. I mean, it's good news, sort of.
This is exactly the kind of thing that we're always like. The Level 1 news need to be longer. Not really, no. To be able to talk about these things more properly, because a lot of the people in the audience are like, this is really good. It's a higher minimum wage. It's great, blah, blah, blah. But there is actually a terrible downside here that most people are not reporting on.
Let's just think back. Both Bernie and Trump congratulated Bezos and said, you're doing God's work. This is a wonderful thing.
They agreed on something.
So before we talk about this part of it, though, let's talk about the evil genius that is Jeff Bezos, right? Without even knowing this next story. And I'm not showing you this story on the screen because we didn't bother to put the minimum wage one in because it leads into this. But here's what you might not know about the $15 minimum wage. Amazon is actually having trouble pulling in seasonal workers because they'd rather work closer to home at Target and Walmart. I think they pay $12 and $14 respectively, right? So we're coming up on the holiday season. It's time to start hiring. In order to take those workers away from Amazon, Walmart and Target started hiring early. So again, they played an early move that Bezos might not have expected. So what did he do? He shut them down in one swift motion. He pays more, and people are going to go to that, right?
Yes.
I mean, and especially if you're a seasonal worker. But how do you pay for it? That's the question. Who benefits and who loses?
So Amazon warehouse workers who are also getting this raise are losing their bonuses, the stock awards and raises, which Bernie and the other people did not consider when they were considering the Amazon compensation packages.
That stock is worth north of $2,000 per share.
Well, somebody that's been working at Amazon the past 3 or 4 years, if they held on to their stock, the stock would be hugely valuable. But
I'm saying like you get it this year.
Oh,
right?
okay, yeah.
You get your bonus this year at that's like 2,200 shares, something like that. How many? And your raise was $2 an hour.
Yeah,
that's a lot of hours that are
making less
immediately just stripped away. Yeah. Now Bezos has said that he's going to compensate people who would be affected negatively by the raise, and they will still get more money overall. And supposedly they're doing a different kind of stock thing. We've heard that from a questionable source inside Amazon, not from any official.
Slightly questionable.
No official channel. I like to imagine he's just going to send moon rocks.
That would be hugely valuable, though, because moon rocks are worth like $500,000, right?
Yeah. Or if you get a 22-pound meteorite, that's like $100,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. But yeah, in so doing this, I mean, it's good that the minimum wage inside Amazon is higher, but it's sort of malicious compliance. I mean, I guess it's good for the seasonal workers because they weren't eligible for stock.
Well, it's good. I think
just buy for headlines, right?
It's really good if you're just starting.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to work your way up. And you aren't vested anyway, right? I think it takes 2 years to get the stock. Yeah. So those people benefited at the cost of the higher end workers. And part of this is bonuses. So if you're one of those like really hardcore, like, got to pack them all kind of Amazon workers,
you're really good.
You could hit those monthly bonuses every month. I don't think there's a limit. So those people are really getting hit by this.
It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. Like I can't wait for the Level 1 follow-up story in like January where it's like, this is how it shook out for the holiday season.
Well, do you think what will happen is like, they'll look at their numbers and be like, all of our top performers are not performing well and all the new people aren't performing well, so we're just going to convert everything to robots.
Yeah.
Oh, he wants to desperately.
Yeah.
But
now he'll have an excuse and not feel as bad, I guess.
It's too difficult to organize all those robots for now.
For now.
Yeah, we'll see. The other dirty secret that came out about Amazon this week, if you're shopping on Amazon and you think, well, I'm not buying directly from Amazon. I'm just, they're just the marketplace. So I'm not giving them all my money. Well,
you're wrong.
Secret Amazon brands are quietly taking over Amazon.com.
I have not heard of these. Let me look at them here. Arabella, Larkin Row, May, New Pro, and Small Parts.
I want to say that Larkin Row might be a clothing brand. It sounds familiar because I was looking for t-shirts the other day and came across one and it was like, oh, this is for Amazon Prime members only. It's like an Amazon brand. And I was like, what? When did that happen?
But these aren't technically Amazon the same way that those startup delivery companies. Remember them? Not technically Amazon. In other words, we don't have to pay these people $15 an hour.
Yeah.
But Amazon does own them in some capacity. And there's a lot of worry that they're going to show preference to these brands because this is money directly in their pocket. But their competitors are going to be also using Amazon. So
that seems likely. But I think that also, I mean, if Amazon follows suit with the way that, Fortune 1000 companies have followed, these wholly owned subsidiaries can take advantage of like labor practices and things like that, where if it comes out later, it's like, well, that wasn't us. That was our supplier.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, not only that, but they do those like, this is the number one. This is the most popular choice on Amazon. If you do a search for like
Amazon's
lawnmower,
choice.
Yeah. And these things, aren't they going to get special
Yeah.
consideration? I mean, of course they will. So, yeah. Now the big question from all of this is, what is Bezos going to do with all that money?
He's going to the moon, Alice.
I tried that last week, and Krista doesn't know what that's about.
He's not going to the moon. He's shipping several metric tons of cargo to the moon. I like to imagine it's like his old college, decorations or, like
Political
old
enemies. Good luck with your
A
police
dead hooker,
investigation onto the moon.
Yeah, I know a couple of people who would like to have their old college stuff shipped to the moon. So this is actually going to be supplies for future moon bases. It's an interesting thing about the moon because there was a 1967 treaty that said that no one can own anything in space. But then the U.S. recently was like, you know what? That was a good idea then, but you know what? Now it's just like if you're up there, go ahead and do whatever you want. Go ahead and start your moon bases. So I think actually that might be some Japanese companies that are thinking about doing that.
Yeah, we did a story about them a while back.
He's definitely going to take their stuff up there and drop it off, let them get started. I'm excited about a moon-based future.
Would you go? Would you visit?
I wouldn't want to visit, no. If I was going to go, I'd want to go for like those guys who went to Iraq and drove trucks for like $300,000 a year because of the risk.
Something like that.
I'll do like moon mine networking for 2 or 3 years and then just come home and retire. I'd do that. Yeah, that sounds decent. So good luck to Bezos. If he's not, if the torches and pitchforks don't get him by then, maybe we'll get a moon base. Well, here's a question. How dark is a future where your skills can be measured without any sort of testing? Just
they just scan your brain.
Or is that a good future? Because that means no more tests,
But what do we do with the people who fail?
That's a question we have now, too. I guess they work at Waffle House? I don't...
This article on the Wall Street Journal, the headline is "Brain Scans Can Detect Who Has Better Skills." The actual work that was done here is a bunch of neurosurgeons were brain scanned while they were doing surgery, not on people.
Well, they practice cutting very straight lines. So there's a test where they have some sort of medium where they cut it. And based on how, the depth of the cut and the straightness of it and the speed at which they go, how steady they are, all that is very easy to measure. And they scanned their brains while they were doing it. And it turned out the brain scans, the level of activity in a certain part of the brain, like the cutting center,
wherever that is,
matched up very well with the results.
I feel like that there's tons of dystopian science fiction where they put the brain scan on the thing and like the 70-year-old and it's like, congratulations, Timmy, you're going to be a plumber. And he's like, I don't want to be a plumber. I want to be a politician.
How terrible if you are perfectly suited for something you hate.
Maybe the Harry Potter universe is actually very technologically advanced because don't they have the sorting hat or whatever?
Yeah, the sorting hat is kind of BS as an adult. It's like also like Harry wills himself into Gryffindor. He was supposed to be Slytherin.
So
and then he's like, I don't want to be in Slytherin.
So we're gonna have to build some human rights in the technology. Is what you're saying? That if you if little Timmy's concentrating real hard on being a plumber, the technology's like, well, I guess we can let you be a mediocre plumber.
Could that be a self-fulfilling prophecy where the effort you go into to beat the test tricks your brain into increasing activity in it?
Yeah, it turns out there's this thing called neuroplasticity where like your brain will adapt to the situation that it's in. So it's this evolutionary force for millions of years.
That's how I'm not dead from lack of sleep.
The brain scan thing could just as well be this person has worked harder to become a surgeon versus this person has the better natural ability.
Well, see, we could find that out because we start testing them right, before they go into any kind of
Yeah.
training.
They're immediately going to do that for programmers. It's like, this guy's a poser. This guy's a poser.
That would be true. That would be like simultaneously the greatest thing to happen to the industry and also just a mass wave of unemployment.
This guy's just here to try to collect a paycheck and doesn't actually have any talent at all.
So they're quick to point out, it's like, now we know how scary and dystopian this is, but we would only do it for surgeons and pilots and, bus drivers and things like that.
And 12-year-old school kids going to boarding
Right,
school
yeah.
at
And
Hogwarts.
eventually plumbers and electricians and
Fulfillment center workers, probably, eventually. It's like, oh, I'm sorry.
Fine.
Your sorting ability is too low.
it turns out your brainstem is perfect for us to insert this shunt into it. You're going to be experiencing just pure bliss. Meanwhile, the robot is going to control your body to actually pack and sort our packages.
Dark times, especially if you're a young student, you're trying to find your way in this horrific world where things are happening, but there is a silver lining for you.
No cash needed at this cafe. Students pay the tab with their personal data.
I feel like that anybody that's been watching this program for any amount of time is already just doubled over with laughter, because this is literally a cafe on a campus where college students, they don't pay money. They pay with something else.
Their names,
Yeah,
they're
they-
like that's terrifying.
Oh, it's
Like,
not. They fill out a pretty exhaustive questionnaire, and it's their preferences and all of their personal info and all that stuff. I think like their credit score and stuff like that.
Wow,
So
that's insane.
all of that,
That's insanity.
is it though? I mean, your data has a lot of value in aggregate, but personally, each of our data isn't really, like, we can't sell it. There's no market for it, right? If you could trade it for free coffee, meh.
They're going to get and leak your data on the internet anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they're not making any bones about that. Your data is immediately sold, immediately, and they will advertise to you based on all of that. So you are totally,
What's not to love?
but you get that sweet free coffee, man. I wonder, this story did
It's
not.
worth like $1.
Oh no! Look at this place.
It does
This
look
is like a
nice.
$5 a cup kind of place,
That's why I
especially if
wanna
you
go
get
to
the
Starbucks.
caramel macchiato.
Oh, yeah, you can't just get the garbage stuff. You can't just get a black coffee.
The other thing I wonder about that is there a limit, right? Because they're keeping track of who you are.
Yeah, there's no way you can. How much data do they want each time?
Well, you can't give them more data every time. I mean, eventually
Yeah.
that's blood from a stone. It's like, well, I went to the bathroom 4 times yesterday. Okay, that's something new. But, if I went in there and I was like, give me 20 muffins, is my data worth 20 muffins? What if I do that every day? There's got to be a limit.
We need to push it to the limit.
How do you know that reference?
I just do. I don't know other important references, but I know that one.
Well, it's been a week of big announcements, and some of which were failures. And Microsoft decided they needed in on that action as well.
Now remember, Microsoft fired all their testers about 4 years ago. And Windows 10 just had this major October 2018 update, and it's deleting a lot of user data. So your documents folder and stuff, if you change to like where that is, there's a good chance that the update is just going to delete it. It's just, your stuff's just gone. And because they turned off shadow copy, because they're horrible, terrible, terrible people, because shadow copy was a thing in Windows 7, and in Windows 10 they turned off shadow copy, and you can kind of like hack it back on, but it's a shadow of its former self.
Or not. So they have said, you know what, you guys, people were reporting this, and Microsoft was sort of not saying anything about it, but it got to the point where enough people had confirmed it, and there were videos about it and stuff, so Microsoft was like, you know what, we're just going to undo that.
It's fine.
They actually even announced today via Twitter that you could call support, and support will help you recover the files that have been deleted. So I called support, and they were like, what are you even talking about?
Do you think they were angry? Like, how many calls do you think have they gotten about this thing on Twitter?
Hundreds, probably thousands.
I don't think the PR team coordinated with support.
Yeah.
When they
I
made that
can't imagine a
announcement.
world where they would not do that.
Yeah. Now that was on Sunday for those of you watching at home. So I don't know. Like by Tuesday, maybe they're clued in. Maybe there's a fix, but kind of doubt it.
Now, this next article, it says it was written by Carl Bode, but this is clearly, I know this man's work. This is Captain Obvious.
Captain Obvious has been doing some like commercials on TV lately. I don't know. The headline is Report finds U.S. wireless video streaming utterly mediocre thanks to arbitrary carrier throttling. Yeah, so if you watch Netflix on a mobile phone, you are probably experiencing YouTube as it was circa 2006. So, 360p. It's
Back when it first launched.
Yeah, I think
juddery mess.
Did it come out in 2007?
Yeah.
But they make.
It's fine.
They don't even pretend that you're going to get more than 480 with most of those plans.
Yeah.
If you read the fine print.
Yeah.
So, on a small device, maybe you don't notice, but I don't know. The pixels get pretty big on a modern phone at 480.
Turns out people feel like that's ripping them off. I can't say that I disagree.
Yeah, and I do not consume media on my phone. But it seems, the more and more the world is going that way. So,
yeah. I think that AT&T and Verizon and stuff are not upgrading their networks fast enough, especially given their profit margins. If you look at how much profit, it's like a water company. It's like, the water company made $4 trillion this year. And it's like, what? All they do is sell water. The communications company just sells communications. That should not be a high margin industry. It shouldn't. Sorry, it should.
Well, you, sir, have no place on the FCC. You've just made it clear. Well, mobile media, I might be missing the boat there. I might be too old. But you know who loves their mobile devices? The Chinese. And it's gotten to the point where it's a little bit of a problem. And they're having to come up with some interesting fixes to try and keep the children off those mobile devices.
So Tencent, which is a big company that does a lot of stuff.
They have way more than just like digital stuff. Too.
Yeah,
I've recently learned that like a hotel. They had a hotel.
Yeah,
it's common in China, isn't it? Where companies invest in hotels and real estate.
Yeah,
along with their other stuff.
You got to diversify. It's a big thing. But yeah, so Honor of Kings is really big. It's a really big mobile game, and there are restrictions on how long kids can play, and so it's a problem because as a kid, because you have a lot of time in your hand, I'll just create 4 or 5 accounts, play on each one of those. They're starting to employ face recognition to try to stop the kids from doing that.
Stop the smurfing problem.
No, it's not smurfing.
Yeah, I know.
It's just
they just don't want kids on there all day.
They pass some kind of law because it's a real huge problem. And we talked about last week, Fortnite has been cited in over 200 divorces now.
That's outrageous.
Yeah. So it's that kind of addiction. Actually, I think it's probably a little bit worse for the Chinese mobile stuff. So you can imagine the way that Fortnite is treated here. We actually got a nonsense story about that this week as well.
The monetization algorithm did not like something in that episode. I don't know what it was, but it's something.
Oh, I think I know what it was.
Well, don't mention it, for God's sakes.
It was the...
You'll have to go watch it. You'll have to go find it because you didn't even get notified about it.
It was the username. I remember what that was. I know. We put this story in here. This is the gaming section, in case you didn't notice. We've transitioned. This story, I've never heard of this game.
I hadn't heard of this game either.
This is just another cautionary tale. We like to do these every once in a while about being careful what you back with crowdfunding.
Limit Theory has been canceled 6 years after Kickstarter. So it collected $185,000 from Kickstarter, but the guy's been working on it 6 years. So I don't know that.
But it's never going to be released. He's going to release the source code,
right.
But he's not releasing it himself.
It's a cautionary tale, but
well,
the cautionary part is that overpromise and underdeliver.
This guy,
but he tried. Oh, he tried.
Therefore, no one should criticize him.
I don't know what he put into this game in terms of like assets and stuff like that, but he probably lived on 20 or 30 grand a year.
Maybe less.
Could be, but the problem is no one gets anything out of it except him.
Yeah.
Like he got a fun little adventure, found his limitations. Oh, it turns out he can't do this. Now he is going to release the source code, but it's not functional at all.
I guess I'll reserve judgment until I get to the source code. And if I get to the source code and it's like "Hello World," going to be super disappointed.
I think
he just copy and pasted a bunch of Unity assets and said, "Okay, for 6 years."
I think small individual pieces of it work, but there is no cohesive game.
There's no gameplay mechanic. Really.
And
That's the problem.
Maybe the community can get together and fix it. Who
But you
knows?
need someone to come up with you can't just have a bunch of assets and a bunch of cool settings. It has to have a gameplay mechanic. And if that core isn't there,
it was going to be like Star Citizen, I think, like open world space.
Wow, one guy that's even more ambitious than one guy doing his own operating system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this next story, listen, if this turns out to be some kind of hoax or fake news or whatever, don't correct us because I find it very difficult to believe. Twin Galaxies, I guess that's the arcade people, right? I think they confirm all of the like world records and all that stuff. So they're somewhat legitimate as far as I know. But this, I can't.
We really should have put this in the nonsense section, but we'll give you a laugh. We'll give you a laugh send off. KFC, as in Kentucky Fried Chicken.
No, but it's not.
Everyone take your hat off for the Colonel.
They took out the
Press
actual
F.
meaning.
They have a new gaming division named KFC Gaming. And you read this article, and the only thing I was thinking there the entire time was, one, you're a little late. PUBG is off of its, it's
declining.
It's off of its apogee. It's
well, you got to mention that winter chicken dinner seems to be the only idea that they have so far. They're like, we serve chicken, and that's popular in video games, right? Right? We're a marketing department.
Seems like a slam dunk. I mean, how do you not?
So it might be that they're not making a game, but they're just like getting involved in esports or something like that.
Capacity.
I don't know. Maybe they're going to have a team.
What if they? I'm imagining. Those like really intense esports sections with what is it like? Heroes of the Storm or something. They have like it's like in a big arena with the giant TVs.
All of the Blizzard esports are like that because Overwatch is the same way.
StarCraft does that, and
so it's like round one is over, and then like all these girls in KFC bikinis come out, with the chicken buckets, and it's like, here, have your chicken,
You know, it'd be great if they had one of those air cannons and they just launched like a 4-piece, just blasting chicken parts into the
audience. We need to file a patent on a sabot that contains all of the components of a chicken dinner, so they can load it into the air cannon. And then when they launch it at whoever, it securely holds all of the pieces, like, you get a chicken leg and, like the breast or the wings or the thigh or whatever, and like the gravy and...
I'm just imagining mashed potatoes just like...
No, see, I don't think you could do the sides, but I like the idea of the chicken just going wherever, you're just blasting chicken into the audience with no concern about cohesion. Maybe you get a whole leg, maybe you just get a strip of skin.
Who can say?
The fates will decide. And like, have you ever seen when somebody hits a home run, people fighting over the baseball? Imagine a crowd of neats
fighting over a chicken
watching
leg.
League of Legends, fighting over a 3-piece that just landed on the floor. Oh, that would be so good.
And with that, we will see you tomorrow for more news. And if you didn't catch it, we did a live stream on Monday because there was some hardware news. So, brr.
Krista.
I can remember the date. October 10th?
9th.
Today is October... No, are you sure?
Oh, might be the 10th.
I'm pretty sure it's the 10th. Today's Wednesday. October...
Oh, you are correct.
10th.
It was the 10th. I was thinking
It's
of
the 10th.
Tuesday.
And we're here with more tech news.
Just called 1010 Level 1.
We are talking about the government today, which is always a lot of good news, right? They always got our best interest at heart.
What terrible things are they up to?
And let me tell you, the house hunt continues, and I'm affected greatly by this story.
Ajit Pai faces rare criticism from GOP senator on rural broadband failures. So what they're talking about here is that there's a fund, Universal Service Fund, where because the network build out in metropolitan areas costs less than rural areas, they try to charge it so that the cost is the same and then offset the higher cost of building out the broadband network in rural areas with subsidies from the more populated areas. That's how we've done it since the 1960s with telephone service.
Until Wheeler. Wheeler shut it down. And I don't remember the exact reason why, but I think it might have been because he was like, you guys are just taking this money.
Yeah.
You're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So what this senator is saying is, hey, the reason we're not getting any development in rural places is because you took away their money.
Yeah.
You got to give it back.
There were a lot of smaller ISPs that were benefiting from this, but most of the larger ones were taking the lion's share of that pie and not doing anything with it.
Pie, you say?
Was that a pun?
That was a pun.
So, yeah, I don't know that giving them back their free money is going to increase this. We should make performance goals, right? That they have to meet or pay it back.
Yeah, we've got this document from '96 where it's like everybody in America, even in the ruralest part of America, can have 45 megabit symmetric connections, and I still feel like that is an okay number.
Well, we certainly don't get 45 up.
No,
not around here. Yeah. Well, it would be nice. It would be nice to have some rules, right? Some rules that might force them to do these things. I mean, it's
just be reasonable human beings.
It's controversial, and it could certainly be abused. But California decided to take it into its own hands, and well,
the entire broadband industry is suing California to stop the net neutrality law. We reported last week, probably in the week before, that California has their own net neutrality rules, which were very similar to the federal rules.
I think Sunday is when they signed it into law.
Yeah, it hadn't been signed last
We
week.
did not cover the story because it hadn't happened when we were recording.
Now, as I recall, that law was a little bit watered down from its original version.
Well, they went back and forth.
Yeah.
It was like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I think they did put the stuff back in.
Some of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's still pretty friendly for the industry. So what does it tell you that the industry is willing to spend millions of dollars in litigation fighting the law rather than just doing the relatively reasonable things the law asks?
Well, that could cost them a lot of money. And we're talking about pretty large sums here. Sums like, let's say, $2 billion.
Cities are going to sue the FCC to stop the $2 billion giveaway to wireless carriers. So in this situation, the FCC, instead of taking the laissez-faire attitude and saying the FTC is going to manage this, they're stepping in and setting cost caps on what it costs to use public right-of-way and deploy cell towers and things like that. They're not leaving it up to states and cities anymore. They want to set sort of federal caps on what that cost is. But the problem is that those caps are much lower than what a lot of cities and towns already charge for that access, that right-of-way.
Yeah, and a lot of towns don't want 5G because they're on the cancer bandwagon. And again, I don't know enough about it to argue either way. I'm not saying it's true or not, but I think this is also arguing it's like, no, you shouldn't be able to turn this down. This is progress. You must not stand in front of it. And not only do you have to allow it, but here's the price that you're allowed to pay for us to install these machines and no more. So I think they'll get away with it. Well, California didn't just pass that net neutrality law. They went even further, and they've begun the robot war.
You can't spot the bot in California. Automated bots are going to have to reveal themselves.
Spot the Bot would be a great children's book name. I was just thinking about that.
But it's about autistic children.
It's like, are you a bot? Yes.
Oh, no. I was just thinking Spot the Bot, like find the robot, and it was like dystopian. But
There's about 4 people in the audience that are still laughing about that.
Yeah, so the duplex was Google's thing, right? And I don't know if they went forward with that any, but those some people claim that they faked those recordings. Remember those amazing recordings?
Oh yeah,
where you could not tell that duplex was making the call because it was perfect.
Yeah.
But the worry is they're so good that you're not going to know it's a robot, and so California's saying the robot must admit up front that it is a robot.
what if you start telling the robot like your entire life story? It's like, I'm so glad you called. I needed this, and then also it's like, oh, by the way, I'm a bot.
In the case of Google, it's just updating your shadow profile, the whole time.
Ooh.
It's like, oh, tell me more.
This person's depressed.
And how did you feel about that?
Good job, Google. Good job.
Well, not to be outdone by fighting back against the government, New York steps into the fray.
This one I'm kind of a little bit surprised about. New Yorkers are suing Trump and FEMA to stop the presidential alert text messages. So we recently did a nationwide test on could we send a text alert to everybody in America. Generally, that went well. New Yorkers are pissed off. And now the news water is wet.
This is, but when you read into this,
New Yorkers are kind of...
they're not saying you shouldn't be able to, it's not the text message that they're worried about. This is purely because it's Trump. Because you see, they say he could send things that are arbitrary, biased, and irrational. So in other words,
That's not what emergency alerts are for,
it's one of these. Well, I mean, I wouldn't put it past Trump to do that.
I wouldn't.
Let's be honest.
I wouldn't, but I like to think that someone there would be like, no, sir, we don't use it for that.
I think we talked about this when we first talked about the emergency alerts. If they ever delete Trump's Twitter, he's going to go right to this. This is going to be his new Twitter. But what these people are saying is I'm so sensitive that I can't hear some of the things the president says because he's a bigot. And so I must be protected from this. So I'm suing.
So it's like, it's a potential thing. I can't,
That's about the implication. Could they countersue, though, if something terrible happens and they're not warned? It's like,
I don't know.
No one warned me, even though I asked to be taken off of this.
In the information age, is anybody really like completely
In an
unable
emergency
to?
situation, you might be. If your phone was like low on charge, or if you lost it in some sort of horrible accident.
I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I guess I'm not, a normie, but let me tell you, the links that I went through last night to quarantine myself to not see the results of that fight, I couldn't do anything. I was like, oh, I'll just go on Imager. I can't. No.
Oh, yeah.
I had to read a physical book.
The fight, the game for my friends in our Discord was not the fight. Like, they didn't really care about the fight. They just wanted to find a stream that stayed up the whole time. So, like, they would post one and be like, oh, no, the sound's off on this one. Or, oh, this one just got taken down. I found another one.
Yeah.
That was the whole game.
And on the other side of that, there was an army of lawyers playing the opposite,
Yeah, whack
the other team. So, now this, okay. Here's something I want to bring up that's not really, it doesn't have anything to do with this story. But the last story, and I remember last week, there was a story about the FCC, and it was like, Trump's FCC wants to do, X or something. And look at this headline. Democrats draft an internet bill. It's like they have to politicize it. They have to take red or blue in the headline. It's not enough just to report. It's like, oh, the government is doing something. They have to already set us like one side or the other.
So the GeekWire article is about a GDPR-like piece of legislation for the U.S., an Internet Bill of Rights, with big tech, so that you as a user of the internet know what your rights are with your data and this kind of thing. And this is, it's hopelessly idealistic. Everything that you have uploaded to all of the traditional companies has already been sold on the black market.
Did you just say it was hopelessly optimistic?
Yeah.
That's harsh coming from one guy.
Well, I suppose, you're definitely right about that, but maybe going forward, maybe for the children. Maybe those little newborns right now have some ray of hope.
I'm still trying to juggle, like, what company was it that was fined over $100 million for their data breach, and meanwhile nothing happened to Equifax? Oh, Uber. It's like, Uber lost all this information on their customers. It's a $100 million fine. And Equifax, nothing. We've already lost as the consumer. Like,
you think about that story about the cafe that takes your personal information. Yeah. So if they get stopped in this capacity, they'll just start giving away, free baubles for your info. And the younger generation will go for that every time.
Fortnite loot boxes.
You know what the only real fix would be to make it 100% legal for you to adopt lots and lots of alternate egos and personalities. Like, you could write the Social Security office and be like, I need 12 new Social Security numbers and names that go with them, and then just seed the machine with all the disinformation that you possibly can.
I think that would have tax and money laundering implications.
Well, theoretically, the government would still know who you are, like which identities go with what real person. And if they don't keep that secret, we can at least hold them responsible.
Let's think about times that governments have tried things much simpler than that and failed spectacularly. How about India? Remember India?
Yeah. Oh, you guys in India, I'm so sorry for you guys.
It already got hacked.
The Aadhaar thing is so bad. It is so bad. It is so terrible.
Well, we've talked about China and the Dragonfly program, Google, China, coming together in a terrible, terrible union.
Speaking of things that are hopelessly optimistic.
Well, the vice president has stepped in and said a few words on that.
Yeah, Pence says that Google should halt the Dragonfly app development because it's enabling this really hateful regime, blah, blah. I don't know, the irony. We say that as if the U.S. government hasn't done terrible, terrible things to other countries.
I don't think Pence cares too much about Chinese people's rights. He's just looking to get a dig in, Going to get that trade war going. Well, we've talked about the FBI. So they held the one guy in contempt because he wouldn't unlock his phone. They used a dead hand. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
They used a dead hand to get into the phone. They what else did they? Of course, they used the Celebrite stuff, and then there was the big Apple lawsuit, the FBI lawsuit. That was a big story. So the FBI wants to get into your iPhones. And this week, they've found a new vector.
FBI forces suspect to unlock iPhone X with Face ID. So yeah, they got a court order and unlocked his phone with his face.
I don't think they got a court order.
Oh, they didn't?
I'm not
I
sure.
thought they did.
No, because this was the first time, but it's different. Like I think that protection states specifically like passcodes and stuff like that.
Maybe that they use like you're not entitled to your face or whatever, which would be funny.
That makes sense, right? Because you can be photographed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mug
yeah,
shots and whatever.
this guy, and as is always the case, unfortunately, this had to do with abusing children and pornography and that kind of thing. So a dark crime that you really can't defend, and yet these are the ones they use to push the envelope in terms of.
Pretty soon it's going to be forced face unlock at a traffic stop. It's like, oh, we got you for your taillight, but also these 12 movies on your phone that you can't prove that you have a license to, even though you totally do.
And then there was that defense distributed thing. a little suspicious. Well, so they're gonna break into your phone. They're gonna take away everything that you've got there. They're gonna violate your rights. They're gonna steal your data, and now they're gonna just insult to injury. They're gonna take it one step further.
You're going to shoot down your private drone.
Yeah. So Congress has passed a bill that lets U.S. authorities shoot down private drones because apparently they weren't allowed to do that before.
Now, what do you think when a flaming drone falls onto your shingles and starts a house fire? Who's responsible? Is that an act of nature?
I don't think that's an act of nature. I think it's the act of the U.S. government. But
so the way it reads, the actual wording is they have the right to disrupt, exercise control, or seize or otherwise confiscate a credible threat. And I think, that includes buckshot.
I wonder if this means that, so there's also a law that any sort of national forest you're not supposed to have drones in, or national lands, whatever. Does that mean that, the rangers will start shooting them down when they do see them?
They could. Well, there has to be a threat, but by the nature of a drone, couldn't they say that's a threat?
The nature of the drone. You're not supposed to have it in nature. They're banned here.
I wasn't even going for that.
Just shoot them down.
Our pun game is strong this week.
Well, we talk about the Australian law, which was passed or was on its way of being passed. I think they passed it, didn't they?
It was the encryption backdoor side
gate.
Right,
yeah.
side gate. So they want all the impossible situation of the government having a key, but nobody else. Well, all of the industry and the big tech groups in Australia are upside down with anger about this.
The headline is Australian industry and tech groups unite to fight encryption-busting bill. So the politicians literally do not understand math, could be the alternative headline.
Based on the comments from our Australian viewers, they believe that wholeheartedly about their government. They don't have good things to say about it.
I think they hate their government almost as much as most Americans hate their government.
It's really not any more complicated other than the politicians do not understand math. We don't even need to bring computers into it. It has nothing to do with computers. It has to do with math, and they literally do not understand math.
Well, speaking of Australia, or at least their neighbor, and we often talk about how difficult it is to protect your privacy, right? I mean, you're looking at VPNs and, virtual operating systems that single use.
Dozens of aliases.
Just, poisoning the well, that kind of thing. But it's all a lot of hassle. How far are you willing to go? Or, another way of putting it, how much are you willing to pay? Well, New Zealand has set a price.
Travelers refusing digital stuff. Oh, you broke it.
You hit the thing.
Travelers refusing digital search now face a $5,000 customs fine. So if in New Zealand they want to search your devices and you don't want them to, well, you can pay $5,000.
That is one of those things where
really.
It's like it's one of those laws that affect the poor, because to some people $5,000 is not a big deal. Like if who was it, Johnny Depp, that got in trouble for his dogs?
Yeah.
They've eradicated rabies from Australia.
But he was just like, just fine me. Yeah, I'll just pay whatever. Fine. That's cool. Johnny Depp would have no problem. It's like, listen, I got 7 laptops. Just send me a bill. You know what? Take an extra 20 for yourself. You guys are doing God's work here.
That's 20,000.
And
Yeah.
Exactly. So you can't have laws like that because it's unfair for the poor people who can't pay $5,000. I mean, you can't have laws like that for a lot of reasons.
But
Beyond the fact that it's just they're horrible to begin with. It's
Yes.
like I would rather not have an involuntary suppository when I come into your country. It's kind of the same.
Listen, they're comfort coated. It shouldn't bother you at all. Well, this is the second time that the Fitbit, it's saving lives, but it's also solving crimes.
Fitbit for great justice. The New York Times has an article here about a 90-year-old man killing his stepdaughter, or at least the Fitbit data
well, he doesn't really look like a killer.
was used as evidence against him because, he said he went to visit his daughter, but the Fitbit data showed that she died kind of slowly while he was still there, according to his own timeline.
Yeah, well, he gave him a timeline,
bizarre.
an exact timeline of when he was there and when he left. And he claimed when he left, she was still alive. But the Fitbit shows that during the timeline that he admitted to, her heart rate spiked and then slowly drifted into nothing.
Well, he also mentioned like whatever problem he was there to fix. She was so grateful. Didn't she give him like roses or something?
Yeah,
Which is like
it's such a funny
that.
story because
Did it mention his motive? I don't remember the motive.
I think they were arguing about something.
And he just choked her out.
But I can't find it quickly. But he was angry about something, and that was the only evidence they really have. I mean, his story wasn't great, and then they had that Fitbit. So
Well, like someone giving you roses? I've been like, sir, show me the roses.
come on, Krista, that was weeks ago. Well, we've talked about the copyright industry more and more. We have week after week. The copyright industry is just. They're scrambling. They don't know what to do because people aren't pirating as much as they used to. And these groups that were brought together to try to stop piracy suddenly maybe aren't needed anymore. But so they would just disband, right? They
You would think,
just
yeah.
go on their way and be like, oh, we've won. We've won the war on drugs. We no longer need to fight it. Yeah.
Torrent Freak has the Canadian music group proposes copyright tax on internet use. And this is this story is really insidious, but you have to understand that most countries actually do have a copyright tax on blank media. So like buying empty music players and blank CDs and things like that, you would actually pay a tax on that, which goes to the Recording Industry Authority. So like if you are a composer or you're doing film or whatever, and it's just like if you're an independent YouTuber, you're not going to get anything from the industry. But if you participate in the industry, they'll get most of the revenue from that tax. You might get a little bit of revenue from that tax. They want to do this for internet service. So if you use more than 15 gigabytes a month, obviously you're a filthy pirate and you should pay a tax.
Yeah. And if you're thinking, but I don't pirate anything, well, you're a liar.
Yeah.
Because if you use more than 50, all you want is email and images and web traffic, 15 gigabytes is fine.
Hilariously, the people that are pushing for this cite Netflix specifically as a problem because a lot of internet traffic, like 2/3 of traffic on the internet actually, I think, come from Netflix and video streaming services. But Netflix is actually properly licensed.
Yeah.
So,
but they argue that they're still not paying enough.
Yes, exactly.
Because surprisingly, when you don't control the distribution means, you don't matter and you don't get all the money.
Yeah.
So
this is what happens when you have remnants of an industry and they're just like, we need a handout. We're not going to survive without a handout. And it's like, okay, that sounds reasonable. We should totally do that. It's like, no, let them die. Let them die.
They won't.
They won't.
No, they'll fight. And they'll make a lot of money doing it,
They're
whether
very
they win or
survivable,
not.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about swatting when was that? It was earlier in the year. The big swatting story
Oh,
where
we live in fear of swatting all the time.
there was the guys were playing Call of Duty and somebody gave a fake address and the cops showed up. They shot the wrong
It was
man.
in Kansas, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a terrible tragedy. And so people are wondering, what can you do about this? Because, the cops show up and they're militarized and they're going to kill you. Well, Seattle maybe has a solution.
The Seattle's police, techies, and streamers, the Seattle police are telling techies and streamers to sign up for an anti-swatting service. And there's been an update to this.
They don't necessarily stop you from being swatted, but you put your name on this list. And if someone does make a call in on your address, they'll be like, well, we're going to go check it out. We're going to go knock instead of bust down the door.
Maybe.
They're not promising anything. They're just saying that, just let us know and maybe we'll consider that. But
maybe we'll try giving you a call before we, gun down your window.
Now, it turns out they do have, 911 actually has a way to flag numbers. So if there's an old lady who's a little bit crazy who calls 911 every week, there is a way to flag her. And there's a way to flag here's a kid who is literally allergic to everything in the universe. There's a flag that 911 can put on those addresses. This is not that. This is a private company, but they're doing the same kind of thing. So, yeah. And it's something, I guess. I mean, swatting is just such a hideous thing because there's no defense against it. What are you going to do?
Yeah. There's no defense against it, and the machine is literally bloodthirsty anyway. So
right.
It's like provoking the Borg. Don't provoke the Borg.
Well, the Borg is a good example of our next story because, resistance is futile, right?
Kim.com has lost his privacy battle following the High Court of Appeal. So Kim.com has been, this is not his main case. He's got 7 cases going on in New Zealand because procedurally nobody followed procedure, and it's just been a giant dumpster fire. Whether or not you think the guy is a piracy kingpin or not, one of the things was that the government gave out information on him without proper due process. And he won that case, and he won a little bit of money from that case to release some of his assets. I don't know if it was release his assets, but he won some $100,000 of monetary
I think it might have been a settlement because it was unconstitutional.
Yes.
They said, for sure, this was unconstitutional, and so you need to get something for that.
And so the government in New Zealand appealed that, and on appeal, the government has sided with the government.
Shocking. Who could have ever predicted this outcome for the case? So he gets nothing. And he will continue to. Are they still working on the extradition thing?
Yeah, they're still trying to extradite him.
Yeah, I mean,
extradite him back to the U.S. that he's never been to.
The shape he's in, he might never
settle
down. He might die before that comes. So who knows? Well, one of the big hot hashtags. One thing about here at Level 1, we are up to date on all the hottest hashtags.
Always.
One of the big ones for 2018, of course, was delete Facebook. But there's some bad news if you are a Facebook power user.
A Facebook bug has prevented users from deleting their accounts. No, not that bug. Not that other bug. This is another bug.
This is a new one. If you have too much stuff on your profile, the page will basically just time out and not let you delete it.
Yeah, it turned out.
Stacy ran into that.
So the algorithm actually had to consider how deleting all of those posts would affect the rest of Facebook. So it was actually looping through all of your posts to determine what your deletion would look like. And if you have too many, it would time out.
Oops. Was that intentional? Should we not have done that?
Whoops.
I mean, you do hate to lose your most prolific posters, right? Although those people are just probably shit posters. Yeah.
Totally worthless.
Just minion memes as far as and multi-level marketing schemes.
A lot of anime.
The more posts there are, the more ads you can run. So why not, right?
It's all minion memes.
And we talked about Facebook last week running off the CEOs of all of the companies that they gobble up and assimilate. And so the question is Facebook trying to do things that these CEOs disagree with that's driving them away, as with the Instagram founder? He released a press release and was like, I don't know, they're doing some weird things and I don't agree with it.
Look at that. Instagram is testing the ability to share your precise location history with Facebook.
Revealed just weeks after Instagram's co-founders left the company.
I always like that when Facebook acquires somebody, they're like, we want, this company's doing something really amazing. We don't want to do anything other than open up the possibility for the talent here to be able to do whatever they want. And then
as
that
long
talent
as it's what
leaves.
we want.
Yeah, and it's like, and we need all that data. We need the data.
I can't believe it, Instagram. Who would have thought that Instagram would ever do something like this?
Stacy knew. Stacy don't care though. She's an influencer.
There's about half the audience that didn't even get that reference. They totally didn't understand. Well, so how long before hashtag delete Instagram?
A lot of stuff gets past the audience.
I don't think people who like Instagram will delete it, because it's really an addiction for younger people.
Yeah, well, I think Instagram is too hot right now. Eventually, it will.
Yeah.
It'll die like all the others. But right now, it's one of the big ones.
It's so hot right now.
I think that Instagram arguably is probably better than Facebook for building a psychological profile on somebody, because you can see the stuff that they like and the stuff that they don't like and what they spend time on without really even asking them in words.
Listen, I said this last week. You're definitely not getting rid of Instagram during legging season. You know, this is the hottest time.
Because Halloween?
No. Well, I mean, there's Halloween. There's pumpkin spice season.
Yeah.
You know, you got all your new outfits for fall, your new scarves and like new lipstick.
Yeah. Your slutty Halloween costume, you know, and your whole new wardrobe.
Traffic is up 300% in October.
And it's
I could see it.
It's white girl season. So those influencers, you know, like this is the time for them. They're at their peak. So maybe around Christmas you might, you know, get rid of it, but not now. Not right now. And finally, a Facebook story. Now this I thought maybe Captain Obvious wrote this one too. But apparently some people are kind of surprised by this.
Undercover cops break Facebook rules to track protesters and ensnare criminals. So Facebook has a rule that you can't have, you know, like fake stuff on, like you can't be a fake person on Facebook, but you totally can if you're law enforcement. Facebook doesn't care. So you can be a police officer and it's like, hello, fellow criminal. Would you like some drugs today?
That is, I mean, literally, we can look
read
at
the text and the Bob Smith.
It's like
Just a fellow protester.
You sound like a cop. I'm not a cop. So this was Bob Smith here. You could say Bob Smith, of course. Bob Smith was infiltrating Black Lives Matters, I think, and some similar organizations. And so what they figured out through Bob Smith and a couple of other court cases is Facebook, this is not something Facebook allows, but the court system will totally allow cops to use this as evidence.
Yeah.
So the fake cops that you're talking to on Facebook can absolutely use anything you say to them as evidence.
Nobody, not a lot of major media publications published anything on it. But do you remember the Wall Street, like the Wall Street sleep-in thing or whatever?
Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, Occupy Wall Street. They there were a few people that went to the Occupy Wall Street protesters and it was like, man, we should.
We should bomb these motherfuckers.
Yeah, and the Wall Street, like the regular protesters, reported to law enforcement those people, and it was like, we think this guy's mentally unstable. It turns out that guy was working for law enforcement.
Yeah, I remember that. An interesting thing about this story, of course, Bob Smith, you know, he used the Guy Fawkes mask, but another cop that they interviewed with this was like, what you want to do is you want to find somebody who's overseas and you want to use their profile pictures because you need a real picture or nobody will believe you. But imagine if, you know, I mean, in the age of doxing, you're just, you know, overseas somewhere and some cop gets in one of these organizations with your picture and they figure it out and they're militant and you get killed.
I think the more hilarious thing would be that you get reported as the guy that's, you know, trying to, it's like, we need to throw rocks or make Molotov cocktails on Occupy. And it's like, well, that's your picture on this profile. Are you telling me that that's not you? And it's like,
someone could have just, you know, they could have taken this picture. No. Everyone knows that every picture is real on the internet.
Yeah.
So watch out for that. If you're engaged in protests and the like on Facebook, don't trust anybody.
Yeah, it's like, I don't. At what point did it become a thing to try to infiltrate peaceful protests? I mean, like,
well, this is an easy win for a lot of cops.
A lot of these protesters are like the nerdiest, most like non-dangerous people ever.
Yeah, but in large groups, they become terrifying. Yeah.
Speaking of large groups that become terrifying, check out that comments section.
Or the forums. Forums.level1text.com.
And on Friday, we've got a potpourri, a little bit of security. We got some What else? We got with some robot stuff.
You know who loves potpourri? My dog.
She tries to eat the potpourri, doesn't she?
Yeah, she just tried that. She discovered it this week. It's been there ever since I've gotten her, but she discovered the bowl.
Do we have a viral video of that?
No, she doesn't. Like, she'll just pull out a single, like, 2 or 3 pieces and then just sniff at them and then try to eat them. And I'm like, no. But you guys will also love potpourri. Just don't eat it.
Or you could eat it if you wanted to.
They could try. I have to print out the news article.
I don't see any cops around. You do what you want.
People eat sunflower seeds. I mean, it's a tasty, healthy snack. Potpourri.
I don't know.
It's covered in oil and scented oil.
I don't know if it has the proven track record that sunflower seeds do. Yeah, and also nonsense on Friday as usual. So, and one design story. Chris, I bet you didn't even read the design stories, did you?
Maybe I did. Maybe you'll have to watch. Today is Friday, October 12th. Let's get spooky.
It is shockingly quiet in the studio.
We turned off the air conditioner again. We turn it back on between recordings because it gets so hot in here.
But it's not. It doesn't get the temperature back up. We are suffering for you and all of you who complain vocally about the whining noise, which is ironic, isn't it? Let's get right into it.
Sacre bleu. French police officer caught selling confidential police data on the dark web. That's it.
That's literally it.
We have some details about it. So this guy was offering a service on the dark web. He says, hey, you want to know what the police know about you? Throw me a couple of Monero, right? I don't know if that was actually Monero. It was whatever they were using on this online criminal thing. So he could check about your record. He could give you names and addresses of your rival gangs if you wanted to go attack them. And he could do a number of other horrible things because he was a cop and he had access to the systems.
Turns out those searches are monitored, which is why we're reading about this in the news.
Yeah, he covered his trail to some extent, but didn't do a great job. What got him is that I think the FBI seized that crypto forum. So they were able to correlate his posts with his activity in the searches.
Do they not have arrest.org in France?
I don't know.
Arrest.org, that's where you go to find all your old high school classmates.
Now, I like when I'm driving, you gotta make your trips more fun because driving is boring sometimes. I like when I see those here in the U.S. at least, we got these little signs, and they have a radar in them, and they'll tell you how fast you're driving. Right now, if you get above 15 or 20 over the limit, they'll blink. That's the mini game. That's how you keep things exciting.
So you can, see if you can get it to blink.
So this is not the same as a red light camera. These are just, it's just sort of like to guilt you into. It's like, look what you're doing, you awful person. But now they might get a little more sinister.
I found that those generally are like 3 to 5 miles above the speed of my vehicle, like that my vehicle's reporting across several different vehicles.
Yeah. But that sign is now going to be spying on us. It'll be tracking all of our information.
or in other terms, monetized. They are monetizing those signs.
Well, it's your license plate specifically. And
they can send you a fine, though.
No, it's not for that. It's actually maybe more insidious than that because you're never going to know. But we've talked about in the past, malls are working with government agencies, ICE being the big one. And so if you park in a mall parking lot, they've got your license plate number. And now, if you pass one of these things up, they've got your license plate number. And they're going to use this. So if you do something wrong and you say, no, I wasn't driving that day, I didn't go there. Well, now they've got a reason to.
Or even if it's just, we need a reason to search your house. You were going fast on this particular day. We found it. Ta-da.
I don't think traffic citations are probable cause yet, but they might be someday.
I guarantee that's going to come up in some jurisdiction somewhere.
You know what? It's been, I think last week, did we have an embarrassing Intel story last week?
We had an embarrassing Apple story.
I don't think we had an Intel one.
It's rare to not get an embarrassing Intel story. So today, it's nice that we can return to form.
Some Apple laptops shipped with the Intel chips in manufacturing mode. So this is the Intel management engine. That's one of the things, the management engine is something I've complained about a lot in the videos that we do on open source because it's a black box and you don't know what it's doing. Well, in manufacturing mode, over the network, the management engine will accept commands because you might have a fleet of laptops you're looking to configure or something like that. So Apple accidentally shipping end users laptops in manufacturing mode mean that arbitrary people on the same network as the laptop operator could send commands to the laptop, and the laptop will happily execute those commands, replacing firmware or other bad things from a security perspective.
They actually have an app at that website. If you want to go to the One tab, we missed the One tab on Friday. People were furious.
Oh yeah, there
Sorry
were a lot
about
of
that.
comments about that.
You can join the Patreon and help us make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen in the future.
Imagine the outrage if we paywalled the One tab.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you can go to that site and you can download an app that will check for you. And if you are running some non-standard operating system on your Apple hardware, there is also a Python script that you can run, and it'll tell you the state of your management engine. Well, we talk a lot about the miracle of modern medical technology. I mean, it's amazing. These robots that you can swallow and the nano drugs that, it's just incredible things are happening.
Robots that will keep you alive by pumping your blood for you or cleaning your blood.
Or like, like the pacemaker stuff, although that's usually bad news.
Yeah,
and
bad news usually.
This is actually a little bit more bad news that maybe all of this new technology in medicine isn't secured like it should be.
The remote access system hacking is #1 patient safety risk. I don't know about #1, but probably in the top 10.
Seems like
No.
infection or...
They ranked them. And #2 is terrifying. #2,
Tell us what it is, Ryan. You won't believe.
clean mattresses can ooze body fluids onto patients.
I can see that.
Ooh, that's
Infection.
unpleasant.
You don't want them to get a secondary infection.
Sponges, everybody knows somebody who has had a sponge left in them. I know like 2 or 3 people.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody. I've heard horror stories, but I don't know anyone personally.
Ventilators making you hypoxic, flexible endoscopes infecting you. It's like if they touch them before they go inside of you.
Ugh.
So it is impressive that oozy mattresses are not as dangerous as these remote access things. So
What I kind of don't understand about what kind of monster hacks into that kind of stuff? Like,
It's not that they want to kill you, it's that they want to mine Bitcoin.
it's the insurance company.
listen, this Bitcoin way more important than the lives of these people.
Well, WhatsApp, WhatsApp, I don't think it's big in the U.S., is it? It's
Not
more
really.
of a...
It is an international thing.
It's kind of big.
Is it?
It's kind of, yeah.
I have some friends overseas. Those are the people who seem to use it the most. Most people I know.
I guess after
use
Facebook
it
bought
here.
it, they're pushing it more here, right?
Yeah.
But it's huge in other parts of the world. And now there's one more way that you can get hacked.
You can get your voicemail hacked. So the Israeli government authorities warn users about a new method of hacking WhatsApp accounts. And so it's the password reset. I guess it's the built-in security mechanism, but it'll leave you a voicemail to be like, hey, this is your code or whatever. And hackers can get your voicemail easy because that's not secure at all.
Yeah, it turns out that when they did their security audit, it was true that most voicemail passwords were either 0000, 1234, or 4321.
Or not at all, because you can spoof the caller ID. It's like, oh, you're calling from your own phone number. That's cool. But as anybody who has gotten any mobile phone spam lately can tell you, that number that you're calling from, not necessarily legit.
Well, everybody knows that the easiest kind of bet that you can make or insurance that you can sell is that never gets tested.
BlackBerry is taking a page from that book. So BlackBerry races ahead of the security curve with quantum-resistant solution. BS. I mean, it's not really BS. They're just switching to algorithms that are known to be hardened against quantum encryption. But this is a feel-good story for BlackBerry because they're trying desperately to stay relevant. Sorry.
It's so true. I was going to make the same joke.
Considering
Hey, kids.
considering all the ways that you can get into an iPhone, is anybody going to bother with quantum? That's probably going to be more expensive than all the other ways, right?
I can't wait till the Australians that are trying to do the side gate encryption get a load of the hardened quant, and it's like, yeah, we need a backdoor in AES 128. Can you work that out for us? And it's like, again, math.
Well, usually Krista provides the design stories. This week I saw one and I was like, hey, that's a
I'll put
design
that in
story.
there.
I'll put that in there. And she just immediately was like, that's crap. That's stupid.
I don't think it's possible.
I love the name of this font face. It's called Sans Forgetica.
I actually forgot. We always look over the stories before we start. And I literally forgot what it was in the 10 minutes that was ago.
So the theory here is that some sort of apparently credentialed neuroscientists are saying that because you get so used to reading, you can basically just turn your brain off and it goes through the motions of reading, but doesn't actually form a memory. The trick is to supply you with a typeface that is recognizable, but also unrecognizable, so that your brain will have to do some work to figure out what it says, and that will form a memory. Isn't that a tantamount to an admission that once you get used to the font, it's not going to work anymore?
Exactly. Now, there is some science that supports that, say, like a serif font is better for children or people who are dyslexic because the shapes are more distinct, so they can read it a little quicker, but...
Well, it sounds to me like you're picking and choosing which font science you want to believe. Are
what?
you a font denier?
A font denier.
I'm a believer in font creationism.
I don't believe that fonts are caused by human activity.
They just appear on
They're naturally
1001
occurring.
fonts,
Yeah.
Google fonts.
The sun has the most to do with it. Well, we're switching over.
Flat fonter.
Switching to robots. And we always like to talk about robot firsts. Now, robots have written novels before. That is not a first.
They're really terrible from the ones that I've read.
But this one has written a road novel in the vein of Jack Kerouac.
I mean, it's cool, I guess, but...
Is it
Who
though?
wants this?
Yeah. So
Who's the market here?
This person who is a computer scientist / author, I guess, they had the robot that writes books. So they loaded it up in a car and they drove from New York to, was it Louisiana, which is I think,
New Orleans.
Or New Orleans, yeah. And I think that's the same trek that Jack Kerouac took for
On the road.
the road, yeah. So just to see what the robot would come up with. And the reason that we're all talking about it is because the dude put a robot in the trunk of his car, not because the writing was good.
And because Google funded the car and the robot. So
I didn't know Google would find. We got a YouTube channel, Google. I mean, I'm not saying that we could have documented it better and we could have stretched it out into like 7 or 8 webisodes, but I mean, I am kind of saying that.
how about we build the first robot that goes to meetings so we don't have to?
We could load up Stacy just in the car. It would be great.
She might need some pants to be business appropriate.
I wonder if we could modify like one of those, like the little Rascal scooter things to handle highway speeds, because if it's handicap accessible, one of those little Rascal scooters should be fine. So we could literally just get her on the interstate going at interstate speeds, but then when she gets to where she's going for the meeting, it's still handicap accessible.
I don't think so. I think the tire diameter would be somewhat limiting at those speeds.
We're going to need to get with like Boston Dynamics or something. So what I'm envisioning then is a platform where like the accessibility mobility scooter with Stacy on it goes onto the platform, and then the platform is an autonomous driving vehicle, and that can handle the interstate
Can you imagine
speeds.
how terrifying that would be, driving on the interstate and passing?
Stacy's just driving by, just with the
It's taking selfies because that's what she does.
Classic Stacy.
She's the thought bot.
her hair blowing in the wind.
The thought bot.
It's going to take a lot of poster tack to keep her hair from coming off.
Yeah, her hair, it's a little slippery even now. I don't know if you guys know, Stacy's bald. She's
Wow.
big.
You're going to cost her a lot of followers. This is how she eats.
Oh, listen, it's all about the hair extensions and stuff anyway. So she teaches you how to do that on her Instagram channel.
Stacy's going to be the house AI. It's like the AI hotel in Altered Carbon. That's just going to be, it's going to be exciting.
Stacy with an eye.
Anyway, speaking of robots doing stuff for
I
us.
don't think any of those robots are going to come to fruition. But the good news is the lettuce robot is already here.
This is something we could teach Stacy to do.
Farm lettuce?
Farm lettuce, yeah. The exciting thing here is that as the plants grow, the robot moves them around. It doesn't say, but I think that the reason it's doing that is artificial lighting. So
No, they talk about how it's because they make these beds and they outgrow them eventually.
Oh, okay.
So they're all in the same room. But
They need
he'll
to be
pick it
moved
up,
so
put
they
it on
have
this
enough
little
room for their
temporary
roots.
tray here, and move it to where it needs to go, and then he'll start a new one.
So it's got room to grow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
A plant will outgrow a container if it's in there too long.
But the people, here's another shot of him there. So there's a little baby one, and this one needs to
Sprout, if you
be
will.
transplanted into a larger bed. And so these guys go around and they deal with like the watering and stuff like that.
Neat.
Yeah.
Well, Look how like white and space age that room is.
Well, there's probably some some touching up going
Photoshoppery.
on.
It's actually like a 70s lab, and like
It's
they just
just
erased
a
all
big
that.
rusted out. It used to be a butcher shop.
I'm going to ask the viewers at home, I want you to remember that mental image of like that clean, white awesomeness of awesome, very sterile environment, because it's going to be real important for a robot story we're going to have toward the end of the program.
Well, we're moving ahead into the robot future at such a fast pace. Every week we talk about, the robots, they're making lettuce, they're picking strawberries, they're on Instagram, and
Going to meetings that we don't want to go to.
and some people are saying it's too much, too fast.
Would you say that it's Waymo fast enough?
Way more alarming.
Waymo alarm.
Fully driverless Waymo taxis are due out this year, which has alarmed critics because they don't think Waymo is anywhere near ready. The software just doesn't have it yet to be able to be, Johnny Cab.
This is going to be in Phoenix, and it's not going to be no more person sitting up front observing. Full autonomous taxis in Phoenix this year, they're saying.
So you might want to move to Phoenix.
There's only a few months left in this year, so it's
You know
going
what?
to be exciting.
You know what we forgot to do? I forgot to put the story in about the new government regulations of self-driving. Well, we'll cover that. It won't be in the one tab. I'm sorry. You're on your own for this one.
The U.S. Department of Transportation has caught wind of this.
Yeah, and one of the big changes that they're making is the word driver can now refer to self-driving systems.
Interesting.
So if there's a law that's like the driver must be present, it's okay for that to be robot driver.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that also means the company is responsible for the driver's behavior.
Exactly. Yeah, the driver would have responsibilities there, and who knows where that settles out to ultimately.
Well, that's and now you start to realize that that's one of the many reasons that Google moved under the Alphabet umbrella, because the tens of millions or perhaps hundreds of millions of legal settlements from Waymo cars run amok doesn't affect Google proper or our parent Alphabet.
How long before somebody dives in front of one of these?
About if the road videos from Europe are to be believed, about 15 minutes. People are desperate, and the whole insurance scam thing. It's like everybody's got a dash cam in Europe, so.
But
Russia,
there's
it's really bad for that.
much more than a dash cam on these cars.
Yeah.
So,
So we're going to be able to detect your angle. It's like, not only did you jump on the hood, you faked it. That was not even, you only suffered 2.3 Gs of acceleration.
Here was your rate of acceleration versus the cars. And we've calculated 500 different things. If you would have turned your ankle a quarter inch, you would have been fine. So now we prove that you did this on purpose. Well, we talked about BlackBerry and their quantum gambit. And they are not the only quantum explorers this week.
Researchers have created quantum artificial life for the first time, which is a pretty clickbaity headline. When you read into it, they're really just using quantum qubits to simulate a lifelike game.
And it's pretty primitive.
Yeah.
There's a genotype qubit, a phenotype qubit, and then some extra qubits to determine like how they would interact. And they just sort of run these things. It's very primitive. It's not incredible, but like most things in the quantum world, if you scale it up, they're like, no, totally. When we hit 500 qubits, this is going to be amazing. Just wait. Just wait and see. So.
But buy it now. Wait and see.
Well, I don't think they're selling anything.
No, not in this case, but usually that's the way it is in tech.
I don't know. We got demonetized last Friday. I think I know why.
I'm not sure I do.
This one, I mean, we just can't say the name of this thing.
We've got a story, and we've got to talk about the Grindr app. But there's an extension for Grindr, and the game here is going to be that we're going to try to avoid saying what the name of that extension
It's just
is.
Ducker.
I don't know. That might be too close, because when I say Oogle it knows what I'm talking about.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's call it Fancy.
It's like fancy, like the Bears.
Fancy, the desktop app that will let you track people on Grindr and a lot of metrics about them.
This is as a programmer, this is really bizarre, because it's a desktop app that interfaces with Grindr, and so Grindr provides a certain amount of information to users, and it's I guess a dating app maybe is the way to describe that.
I think Grindr.
It's more of a hookup app.
Yeah, it doesn't advertise love. as the outcome of these interactions.
And this app is able to tell you way more information about participants in this application.
Did you say Waymo information?
It's not Waymo. It's Grindr.
And so,
Well, let's itemize some of those things.
whether or not your HIV status,
That's a big one.
your exact location down to a couple of inches.
Yeah. So you can find other people who are down.
Your history on the app.
Yes, how you participated, photos that you may not have shared.
Your preferred position, which we will not elaborate on.
And so it seems like you, as a programmer, you would just I was like, oh yeah, we shouldn't allow these unauthenticated desktop apps to access this information. Let's just turn that off in the API. Problem goes away. You don't have to have. But instead, the Grindr people are suing the app developers, saying, oh no, don't do that.
Well, they DMCA'd him, and he filed the counter DMCA saying, I have not used any of your copyright works. I wrote this completely from scratch. I just happen to be hitting your API. And that immediately results in a court case.
So that makes me think that the Grindr app people don't actually have any real programmers. It's probably just like, they probably just, hired some people off of like odesk.com or something.
You saying they made a temporary hookup with their programmers?
Yeah.
Not a long-term relationship?
And that is perhaps the root of the issue.
So it turns out that they have actually gone to GitHub, because this is open source, and to get this taken down, and people just keep forking it. So there's 90 forks.
Oh, all those forks on GitHub.
There's a lot of just wild forking going on with this app. It's unsafe, the level of forking.
Isn't that worth joining Patreon right there? I mean, we put a lot of work into these
We're
jokes.
going to get demonetized even though we've made that joke. Just because we showed the article briefly on screen.
GitHub, it's a programmer thing.
Yeah, they got that OCR stuff on the algorithm now. Well, if you're a Tesla fan, and God knows there's some of you in the audience, you got one more thing to worry about other than the short sellers.
This story's actually kind of funny, though. I mean, in a horrible sort of way.
So you watch the video, and this guy is pulled over. And I wonder if this camera is stock or something he added.
He may have added
It's mounted pretty high. I don't know. Do Teslas have? Oh, no, that's the camera to see if you're paying attention.
Is it?
I think
Maybe,
so, yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. So the officer pulls him over, walks up to the car. He's driving a Tesla Model 3, and it's like, sir, you're not allowed to have your computer mounted like that. And it's literally just the dash computer on the Tesla Model 3. And so then finally, like, it took some convincing, but finally the police officer was like, okay, well, I guess, whatever.
Yeah.
You should watch the video. It's
He
pretty
seemed
funny.
just incredulous for the longest time. I think he was worried that this guy might be watching movies on this, which is funny.
Who does that?
What's funny because remember the guy who ran under the tractor trailer?
Yeah.
While he was watching Harry Potter.
Yeah. In the Tesla, because it was self-driving.
I don't know if the Model 3 has that feature though. Probably does.
It does. It has got some self-driving, or you may have to pay to unlock it. I don't know, but he was like, no, it just controls the headlights and air conditioning and whatever else. So there you go.
Got him a nice viral video.
We should give that guy a round of applause, but some people might be triggered.
This
Come on, guys.
We always
Put your
have
hands
to. We got to give our disclaimer that we slip in at least one non-tech story every week in the nonsense section. I couldn't pass this one up.
I don't see your jazz hands.
Clapping is replaced with jazz hands over fears noise could trigger anxiety among you. I really feel like this is something a troll has done. Like a troll.
We covered another story like this, but I don't remember what university or if it was just a tech conference or.
Okay, this is another terrible aside that has nothing to do with technology. But did you see? Remember the crazy story? I think we crowbarred that one into the news too. It was about they wrote a paper and got it published about how dog rape in dog parks was sexist. Like if a male dog mounted another male dog, there was great outrage. But if a male dog mounted a female dog, there was no outrage. Well,
you're not supposed to let your dog hump another dog regardless of the dog park.
That's not
Just
important.
FYI.
We worked so hard on our monetization.
That's immaterial because it turns out there were 3 people who were just doing a social experiment on the craziest papers they could get published. And they had this guerrilla campaign. They got like 20 papers published that were all equally ridiculous. It is a fantastic read if you look that up. But they were just like, they got jobs at universities and infiltrated. And they're like, let's see how far we can take this. and they took it to.
So to replacing applause. Well, I mean, theoretically, this is people replacing applause with jazz hands.
Because,
look.
But what if you don't have hands? That's not
You
inclusive.
can still do
Jazz stomps.
Jazz stomps.
Use your feet.
Jazz feet would be fine.
Oh, I can't do my
Also known as happy feet, maybe.
I think that's a copyright, isn't it?
Yeah.
I hit the desk. It's fine.
Oh, well, this is
It's a terrible idea. And speaking of terrible ideas.
Yeah, this is I mean, we live in a somewhat free country. I think we rank 58th on the freedom scale internationally. Here in the land of the free.
USA.
It's slipped a bit.
You can do what you want, but there are some times where you legitimately should not.
This is an iPhone case that looks like a gun. What could possibly go wrong?
I don't see why anyone would be upset by this.
I mean, look how cool you're going to be answering your phone.
Look, she has no trigger safety at all there. Just puts her hand right there.
That is, the trigger discipline is non-existent there. So yeah, the social media post by a police officer, I guess. I don't think it was like
a police department.
But they were just saying, please
do this.
don't be this stupid because we're going to kill you.
Not only are you like, we're just going to keep some of these in the back just in case we accidentally shoot people. Throw it on you. It's like they had this phone case. It doesn't fit their phone, but I mean, I guess it's understandable.
Most people carry an iPhone, so statistically,
but there's so many different models. I mean, do you have the XS or the XL or the XR?
Well, we live in this brave new world of jazz hands.
New world, nicely done.
And I don't agree. I don't agree with the jazz hands world. I don't want to live in it. I don't like it. But at some point, you do have to accept that, in order to function in this world, you're going to have to deal with some of that. And some people don't, and it doesn't work out.
This story made the rounds everywhere. CERN scientist says physics is built by men, not by invitation. And so he did a presentation where he talks about men in physics and not women in physics. And there's even a
he's
graph.
specifically upset about women being included in physics. It was a little nebulous.
it was about, so he had all these slides. You can see he made some charts, and he has all this evidence, or so he claims evidence, that women were getting jobs when they were less qualified than men. He said it happened to him. And it happened to several of his coworkers. So he gave a presentation proving this. And this is one of those situations where it's like you're bringing facts. It's like a knife to a gunfight. I don't care how many charts and numbers you have here. You are not going to win. And he, in fact, has been dismissed.
Oops.
Some of his numbers were not exactly accurate either, though.
What, did you run your own studies?
I just, did you actually look at the thing? The document he provided?
Briefly.
I read the whole
I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know yes or no whether they're true or not.
It was poorly put together, to say the least.
It definitely didn't account for like if there was inherent bias when he started and gathering the numbers, or if whatever. But I would believe that this type of action to like try to balance things out when maybe there isn't a balance yet is not something that happens overnight. Like
yeah.
It's like we need a 50-50 ratio in this, and it's like, well, there's currently not a 50-50 ratio in the talent pool. So how do we resolve that?
Yeah, you can't resolve. Well, and I don't think it should be mandatory hiring quotas, but it's like, do you really need to like try and just like bust people for this? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish here? And the answer is,
he was hoping to get a break and not lose his job.
Opposite has happened. I think I know what he was trying to accomplish. User engagement. And we're going to get a lot of comments about that story, aren't we?
Oh, there was already a topic about it in the forum, and it had to get shut down because...
Oh, yeah, it was on fire.
Do you know the clip from Anchorman where he's talking to Veronica in the newsroom, and he's like, women have brains a third the size of ours. It's science. That was basically what the thread devolved into, and it was kind of unfortunate.
Aw.
Yeah. A little unfortunate that we couldn't have just a discussion of the paper, but,
Well,
we tried. You were hanging out and like lurking, which I think is funny because it's
I was like, this is my experience, and maybe take it with a grain of salt, but There is some bias both ways, I think. Both against men and against women.
We talked about this last week. I know of at least 2 occasions, Wendell, maybe you've seen some other ones, that Krista has for sure been discriminated against
Yeah.
because of her sex.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, but man, we had a good laugh about it.
Yeah.
But I think...
I mean, it doesn't happen often because our office is actually pretty cool, but like when it does, it's very clear what's going on.
Yeah.
Very clear.
And you're in a good position because, like you say, here, it's like we can just laugh about it later.
Yeah.
And it's not really going to affect you. So
But if you had to work there and it's like, oh, my job prospects, I can't
It's really shitty. I can't imagine. I can't imagine being a woman in the environments in some of these other firms. Like how terrible that would be.
It is delightful though because you actually have the skills, and so it's fun to just watch you do your thing, and they're just clueless.
Tear them apart limb from limb.
yeah.
It's delightful.
Although, you could argue that the ferocity with which you go back at them
Well, listen.
is unique to the female.
No, listen. So here's the thing. I didn't start that way. But when you repeatedly dismiss me and like don't listen to me after you specifically requested me being at a meeting, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be nice anymore. I'm not here to be your mom.
In the context of the guy that wrote the physics paper, I could see that kind of a response coming out of that kind of an environment, you would maybe get a pass on. So like if HR is looking at it and it's like, oh yeah, we can't, accept that kind of behavior from an HR standpoint, then given the environment that led to the thing that the guy was talking about, I could see HR saying, we're going to give you a pass on that. I could see that. That makes sense.
I would just like to say, when Krista started working here, I told her that her spirit would be crushed within 2
I
years.
was so happy and like I was like,
She was
oh,
so
it's gonna be
bubbly.
great. I love to collaborate with people. I still like to collaborate with most of our clients, but there's a few.
Yeah, I think
you can only push me down so long before I start pushing back. And let me tell you, I push harder.
I think I was only. I think I gave you too much time, actually, and the transition occurred much sooner.
It was like 2 years before I really started getting.
It turns out that
snappy.
the world is a horrible, horrible place.
Not always, but there are certain places that are more terrible than others.
Well, if this gentleman at CERN had done this all as an elaborate joke, we could assign him the role of Troll of the Week. But I think he was being serious. I think he was being serious, so we can't give him that. And instead, I think we have to give it to Banksy.
Banksy definitely troll of the year. This is amazing.
Troll of the decade, really.
You owe it to yourself to watch these videos because they're amazing.
Look how excited everyone's like, oh.
So the backstory is that Banksy, he's a famous graffiti artist. He doesn't he's not a traditional
guerrilla style artwork where he just shows up, paints something, and then disappears.
Yeah, and so this was an auction for one of his works at how do you pronounce it? Sotheby's, I think. Sotheby's auction house, which is where you auction multi-million-dollar artwork. It went for $1.4 million. He framed it and everything, but he built a mechanism into the artwork that it would destroy itself if it were ever auctioned, and it did.
It looks like it just is.
Yeah, it shredded about half of it. I wonder if that was supposed to shred the whole thing, but the battery had been going too long.
Maybe, possibly.
Also, a lot of people presumed that he was in the room because it wouldn't have had any sort of internet connectivity.
He could have hired a proxy.
Could be, yeah. So it went for $1.4 million, and the moment he put the gavel down, it shredded itself. Sotheby's did make the statement, and I think they're absolutely right here. It probably made it more valuable.
I wonder if they were in on it because,
they claim they were not. They had no idea.
Well, they claim that, but, secretly they're like, oh, let's split all the money we just made in the hot tub full of money.
But he wouldn't get anything out of that. Well, I guess if they were in on it, they could have. But see, I don't think there was any guarantee that this would go to them when he first, because he actually recorded installing the shredder when he first mounted the painting, and he was like, "Hey, if this ever gets auctioned, I'm going to shred it." So,
but they'll eat that up. It's a gimmick.
Nicely done.
I think I would love to have the shredded Banksy in my home.
Yeah,
that's a great thing to have. Pretty cool.
Even if it was just a box of confetti, and it's like, "What is this?" and it's like, "That's the thing," and it's like, "Wow, this is amazing." How much did you spend
on that? $1.4 million. Oh.
Now I think I'm going to propose an alternate headline for this next story. The headline I would propose is health experts don't understand heroin.
Yeah. Fortnite, the popular video game for, battle royale mode, is as addictive as heroin, according to these health experts.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
They're saying it's for kids. Like, it's going off and, like, it's pushing all the buttons in kids' brains. And it's
Maybe I might not have seen these stories, but have you seen a lot of stories about kids doing sexual favors to truckers in order to get one more drop in Fortnite?
Definitely.
Haven't seen those.
No.
Yeah. What about, have a lot of kids lured people into alleys and stabbed them to death in order to play Fortnite? Has that happened?
You know, I hadn't heard anything of it. A friend of a friend mentioned something like that, but I don't know.
Maybe
I
not.
seem to remember something about that in Russia today.
Maybe not as powerful a motivator as heroin, but who can say?
And our last story ends on a little bit of a sad note for some entrepreneurs that were just trying to make it in this dog eat dog world.
Listen, they had a good idea and they ran with it.
Can I just say before we start, like, look at these pictures. I actually thought the first one was real.
You got to recall also the sterile clean room. Yeah.
Well, here it is.
Yeah. Like, okay, so the robots where they're making lettuce is amazing. This was going to be the robot brothel. Look at that. It's not. They don't even have clean ceiling tiles. Look at that water stain.
Nothing says sexy time like that sterile white.
Is that? It's hard to tell. That's not a marble floor, right? That's just like a dirty, wet concrete floor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
With an extension cord laying in the middle. Because,
well, listen, you got to charge the girls. Got to keep them going.
That last customer had her,
and here's another one.
They got shut down. Is the story is that this place is shut down before they even began.
Ironically, it's not actually illegal. The city council is going to have to rush to pass an ordinance to make it illegal.
We've talked about these shops who are doing the robot/doll rentals, and even if there was just a giant boiling vat of water that you lowered her into prior to my visit, it could never be clean enough.
Yeah,
Never.
We learned that from the medical story. That in fact,
the dolls are oozing.
Oozing dolls. That's the number 2 threat.
Number 2, first is oozing mattresses. Second is oozing dolls.
It's important that we did the stories in the order that we did, because if you extrapolate from the medical technology story, that assassins could reprogram these sex robots, and that will be the number 1 threat. Because isn't that what we're talking about with the medical technology and the lack of sterilization and oozing from sponges and something left inside of you during surgery? Maybe even I don't know, depending on what you're into. I don't know what's going on.
The problem here certainly is leaving things inside, I believe. Yeah.
So I think that we all the lessons from the medical story we could apply here, and it's. Maybe the city council's not wrong.
But I think the lesson here is buy, don't rent. And don't buy used.
Definitely don't buy used.
The dolls, the other dolls they had in this article did not look quite as realistic as the first one.
Yeah, well, we showed this one off. So
yeah, she doesn't look very real.
They only have these 2. Oh, no, there's another one. Yeah. Oh, this one. This is like the anime girl. She's got the silver hair.
Yeah.
That's the Khaleesi. Oh, there's more. I didn't realize there were so many more.
That wasn't loading earlier. I don't know the story.
So there's like a younger one, You want to look at.
I wonder if they just got better wigs, if that would make some of the illusion better.
She's pushing her little shirt down. Oh my goodness.
Imagine we weren't demonetized before.
Oh, here's a nurse. The oozing nurse. Yeah.
Secondary infection.
Oh, this is incredible.
So this is all technology in Houston that's never going to see the light of day in Houston.
Well, they'll just sell them somewhere else.
Oh, that's the end of it. Yeah, no, she's the best one though. She's the most realistic. I think that's
partly though because she's in a realistic environment.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to dirty ceiling tiles.
Yeah,
you think they have
rooms were like dirty office spaces? Like she actually looks like she's taking a picture somewhere.
You think they have like a nice balcony you could use to get the natural lighting too?
No, I think it's just going to be a dirty white room with like a black couch, and there's literally nothing else in the room.
It's just a flickering light bulb.
Well, I was going to say, do you take her on a date? Do you take pictures of her on social media? Like, hey, took this great beauty out today for a date.
It's one of those little mechanical egg timers to let you know how much longer you've got.
I think they had to go like old style Roman, which is like a clay cup with a hole in it, and then when the water drained out, your time was over.
Well, I'm sure.
Horrific thoughts to keep you occupied.
Horrific thoughts.
Yeah. I didn't even mean to do it. Oh no! Don't clap. I'm triggered. You have to.
Oh, jazz hands.
Yeah.
Well,
that's it for another week of technology news. What all happened this week? You'll remember this week.
Well,
Sans Forgetica.
Because of the font. Yeah.
Is it Forgetica?
Sans Forgetica, yeah.
I don't remember.